The champagne glass shattered against the hardwood floor of our Cambridge brownstone, sending crystal fragments across Emily's freshly polished dissertation celebration. But it wasn't an accident. My wife had thrown it at the wall the moment I walked through the door, her face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. You embarrassed me tonight, Jason, she hissed, her newly minted PhD certificate still lying on the kitchen counter beside a stack of legal papers I didn't recognize yet, standing there like a mute idiot while Paul was discussing my research methodology. I loosened my tie, exhausted from another night of playing the supportive husband at Harvard's psychology department gatherings. I'm sorry I don't have opinions on cognitive behavioral therapy applications in academic settings, Em. I fix computer networks for a living. That's exactly the problem. She grabbed those papers from the counter, and my stomach dropped as I recognized the law firm letterhead. You're extra weight, Jason. You always have been. The divorce papers hit me in the chest before falling to the floor among the glass shards. 3 hours earlier, I had been standing in Harvard's faculty lounge, nursing a beer and watching my wife of 12 years bask in the admiration of her academic peers. Emily looked radiant in her black cocktail dress, her auburn hair perfectly styled, discussing her dissertation on power dynamics in professional relationships, with animated gestures. Jason, right? Dr. Paul Novak appeared beside me, his European accent thick with condescension. Emily's told me so much about you. Paul was everything I wasn't. Tall, sophisticated, with silver hair and an expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He'd joined Harvard's faculty 6 months ago, and Emily had been working late with him on research ever since. All good things, I hope, I replied, watching Emily laugh at something one of her colleagues said. Oh, absolutely. She mentioned you run some kind of computer repair business? IT security consulting, actually. Small but successful. Paul's smile was razor thin. How practical. Lisa Morrison, Emily's best friend since graduate school, materialized with 2 glasses of champagne. Jason, congratulations on surviving 12 years of marriage to our brilliant Emily. She handed Paul a glass, completely ignoring me. Paul, you simply must tell Jason about your research grant. $2 million. Can you imagine? I watched Paul's hand brush against Emily's lower back as he launched into a detailed explanation of his funding. Emily leaned into his touch, her eyes sparkling with an intimacy I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Excuse me, I muttered, heading toward the restroom. The men's room was mercifully empty, giving me a moment to collect myself. But as I washed my hands, I heard familiar voices from the women's restroom next door through the thin walls. God, Lisa, I can't keep pretending much longer. Emily's voice was clear as crystal. Jason is suffocating me. No ambition, no intellectual curiosity. Paul makes me feel alive again. Have you told him about the papers? Lisa asked. Tonight, after we get home. I've already moved half my things to Paul's apartment. What about the house? Emily laughed, cold and sharp. Jason's name isn't on the deed. My father's trust fund bought that place. He'll have to find somewhere else to live. I stood frozen, my reflection staring back at me in the mirror. 12 years of marriage, and she'd been planning my exile like a military operation. When I returned to the party, Emily was giving an impromptu speech, thanking everyone for their support. She raised her champagne glass high, her eyes finding mine across the room. To new beginnings, she announced, and leaving extra weight behind. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Paul kissed her cheek publicly, his hand possessive on her waist. Lisa smirked at me from across the room, clearly enjoying the show. I walked out without a word. The next morning, I signed the divorce papers without reading them. Emily had already left for her new office at the university, leaving only a note about picking up her remaining belongings later. I called my business partner, Mike Chen, and asked him to meet me at our downtown office. Jesus, Jason, you look like hell, Mike said, finding me staring out the window at Boston Harbor. What happened? I explained everything. The party, the papers, the overheard conversation. Mike listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. That's brutal, man. But you know what? Maybe this is a blessing. Emily never appreciated what you built here. He gestured around our modest but profitable office. We've got 17 corporate clients, annual revenue of $800,000, and you did most of the technical work. She's right, though, Mike. I am extra weight. No PhD, no fancy research grants, just a guy who fixes computers. Bullshit. Mike pulled out his laptop and started typing. You know what Emily doesn't know? That shell company you set up last year for tax purposes, the one that technically owns 60% of this business? I'd forgotten about Reed Holdings LLC. Mike had suggested it for liability protection. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Dr. Emily Reed is about to learn that her boring husband is full of surprises. Over the next 6 months, I systematically dismantled my old life. I liquidated my personal assets, transferred everything through Reed Holdings, and moved to a small apartment in Salem under a different name. Emily got the house, just as she'd planned, but she also got the mortgage payments and property taxes that came with it. Mike handled our clients, telling them I was taking a sabbatical. The business continued to thrive, generating income that flowed into accounts Emily knew nothing about. I spent my time learning new skills, advanced cybersecurity, social engineering, digital forensics. I hired a private investigator to document Emily and Paul's relationship, not for legal purposes, but for planning. The PI's report was illuminating. Paul was married, separated, but not divorced. His research grant was under review due to ethical concerns about his relationship with a graduate student at his previous university. Emily's department chair had already received anonymous complaints about her relationship with a married colleague, but I wanted more than gossip and university politics. I wanted Emily to feel the same humiliation she'd put me through. The opportunity came when Lisa Morrison posted on social media about Emily's upcoming tenure review presentation. The entire psychology department would be there, along with the university administration and external reviewers. It was time to come home. I barely recognized myself in the mirror of my Boston hotel room. 6 months of focused fitness training had stripped away the soft middle-aged spread Emily used to mock. New clothes, a different hairstyle, and contact lenses instead of glasses completed the transformation. The MIT Technology Conference was perfect cover. As a registered attendee under my new business identity, I had legitimate access to the university campus, where Emily would be presenting her tenure review the next day. I arrived early and positioned myself in the back of the lecture hall. Emily looked confident as she set up her presentation. Ethical Frameworks in Modern Psychology Practice. The irony was delicious. Paul sat in the front row, wearing a wedding ring I knew wasn't for Emily. Lisa had claimed a seat near the department chair, probably planning to ask strategic questions to make Emily look good. Good morning, everyone, Emily began, clicking to her first slide. Today, I want to discuss the importance of maintaining professional boundaries and ethical standards in our field. I activated the program I'd uploaded to the university's network the night before. Emily's presentation disappeared, replaced by a slideshow I'd prepared from the private investigator's photos and the text messages I'd recovered from Emily's old phone. The first image showed Emily and Paul in a passionate embrace outside his apartment building. The timestamp indicated it was taken 3 weeks before she'd served me divorce papers. What the hell? Emily frantically clicked her remote, but my program had locked her out of the system. The second slide displayed text messages between Emily and Lisa. Emily, Jason still has no idea. He's so pathetic, just sitting there while I plan my exit strategy. Lisa, when are you going to tell him about Paul? Emily, after the PhD ceremony. Let him play the supportive husband one last time, then I'll drop the bomb. Gasps echoed through the lecture hall. The department chair stood up, his face red with embarrassment. Paul had gone pale, clearly recognizing some of the more intimate messages that were now cycling through the presentation. Turn it off, Emily screamed at the AV technician, but I'd made sure the system would run for exactly 10 minutes, long enough for everyone to see the full scope of her deception. The final slide was a photo of Emily and Paul at our house, my house, taken just days after I'd moved out. Emily was wearing my old MIT sweatshirt while kissing another man in the bedroom we'd shared for 12 years. I slipped out of the lecture hall as chaos erupted behind me. Phase 1 was complete. 2 days later, Mike called with news that made my blood boil. They're spreading rumors about you, Jason. Lisa's been telling people you were abusive, that Emily left you because she was afraid. Paul's backing up the story, saying Emily came to him for protection. I met Mike at a bar near our office, my hands shaking with rage as he showed me the social media posts. My former friends, people who'd known me for years, were sharing Lisa's lies without question. There's more, Mike continued. Emily's hired a lawyer. She's claiming you hacked university property and violated her privacy. She wants a restraining order. Let her try. Everything I did was legal, and I can prove it. That's not the point, man. She's destroying your reputation. Tom Bradley called me yesterday. You remember Tom from college? He said he always suspected you were controlling, that Emily was too good for you. Tom Bradley. I'd been best man at his wedding, had helped him start his consulting business, had considered him one of my closest friends. The betrayal cut deeper than Emily's affair. Where is he now? Same place he always goes after work. Murphy's Pub. I found Tom at his usual bar stool, surrounded by 3 other guys from our old circle, Dave, Rick, and Steve. They'd all been at my wedding, had spent countless weekends at barbecues and football games at my house. "Well, well," Tom said as I approached. "Look who crawled out from under his rock." "Hello, Tom. Gentlemen?" I kept my voice steady, professional. "I think we need to talk." "About what? About how you stalked and harassed your ex-wife?" Dave stood up, his beer making him more aggressive than usual. "Emily told us everything, Jason. How you monitored her emails, controlled her finances, made her feel like a prisoner." "That's interesting," I replied calmly, "because I have Emily's actual emails right here." I pulled out my phone and began reading. Quote, "Tom's wife is such a cow. I can't believe Jason makes me socialize with those people. At least Lisa understands that I'm destined for better things." Tom's face flushed red. "You're making that up." "Am I?" I scrolled to another message. "Here's one about you, Rick. Rick's new business is going to fail within 6 months. He doesn't have Jason's technical skills or my strategic thinking. Some people are just born mediocre." Rick stepped forward aggressively. "You hacked her phone, you sick freak." Actually, I recovered deleted messages from a phone she threw away. Perfectly legal digital forensics. I looked at each of them in turn. She had opinions about all of you. Want to hear what she really thought about your wives, your jobs, your kids? "Shut up," Steve growled. "Emily's a good person. She deserves better than a stalker ex-husband. Emily cheated on me for 6 months, planned our divorce like a military operation, and is now lying about abuse to cover her tracks. But you're right about one thing. She does deserve better. She deserves exactly what's coming to her." Tom threw his beer at me, the bottle shattering against the wall behind my head. "Get out of here before I call the cops." "By all means, call them. I'm sure they'd be interested in seeing the evidence I've collected about Emily's relationship with a married professor and the university funds that paid for their weekend getaways." I left them standing there, knowing I'd planted seeds of doubt that would grow. These men had turned on me based on lies, but they were about to learn the truth about the woman they'd chosen to defend. Emily's world began crumbling exactly as I'd planned. The university launched an ethics investigation into her relationship with Paul. His wife filed for divorce, naming Emily as co-respondent. Lisa distanced herself when her own marriage became collateral damage from the scandal. But I wasn't finished. The annual Harvard Psychology Department Gala was Emily's last chance to salvage her reputation. She'd been invited to present her research to potential employers, a final opportunity to land a position at another university before Harvard quietly pushed her out. I arrived at the hotel ballroom early, dressed in an expensive tuxedo and carrying credentials that identified me as a technology consultant hired for the evening's presentation. The event staff welcomed me warmly, completely unaware that I was the ex-husband at the center of the department's biggest scandal in years. Emily looked stunning in a midnight blue gown, her hair swept up elegantly. She was working the room like a politician, trying to rebuild bridges she'd burned with her poor judgment. Paul was notably absent. His wife's lawyer had advised him to avoid public appearances with Emily. Lisa stood near the bar, looking uncomfortable. Several faculty members were pointedly ignoring her, having learned about her role in spreading malicious gossip about me. "Ladies and gentlemen," the department chair announced, "please take your seats for Dr. Emily Reed's presentation on trust and betrayal in professional relationships." The irony was so perfect I almost laughed out loud. Emily took the stage confidently, clicking to her first slide. But instead of her carefully prepared presentation, the screen displayed a single line of text. "A graduation gift from your loving ex-husband." Emily's face went white as she frantically tried to advance to the next slide. But I controlled the system now, just as I had 6 months earlier. The second slide showed financial records, Emily's credit card statements, bank accounts, and mortgage payments. The audience could see that she was drowning in debt, having assumed responsibility for a house she couldn't afford on her graduate student stipend. "Turn it off," Emily screamed at the AV technician, but he was as helpless as she was. The third slide displayed email correspondence between Emily and Paul, discussing their plans to move to California together once they both found new positions. The messages revealed Paul's promises to leave his wife, his lies about job prospects, and Emily's growing desperation as her options narrowed. But the final slide was my masterpiece. It was a legal document, the deed to Emily's house showing that Reed Holdings LLC had purchased the mortgage from the bank 3 months earlier. Emily wasn't just losing her job and her reputation. She was about to lose her home to the husband she'd tried to destroy. "You see," I said, stepping onto the stage as Emily collapsed into a chair, "my wife always said I lacked ambition. She was wrong. I was just saving it for the right moment." The audience sat in stunned silence as I continued. Dr. Reed believed she was married to extra weight, a simple computer technician with no vision for the future, but she never bothered to learn about my business, my investments, or my capabilities. She saw only what she wanted to see. Emily looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "Jason, please, I made mistakes, but this is justice," I interrupted. "You humiliated me in front of our friends, lied about our marriage, and tried to destroy my reputation to cover your own crimes. You wanted to leave extra weight behind? Congratulations. You're about to learn what that actually feels like." I pulled an envelope from my jacket and placed it on the podium. "Your eviction notice, Dr. Reed. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. I'm sure Paul's wife will be happy to help you pack." Lisa stood up from her table, her face flushed with anger. "You can't do this, Jason. It's cruel and vindictive." "It's legal and deserved," I replied calmly. "Emily made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences." I looked out at the audience, professors, administrators, and potential employers who had come to evaluate Emily's future prospects. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Emily Reed, expert in trust and betrayal, practitioner of neither." Emily was sobbing now, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling completely. Paul was nowhere to be found, having abandoned her just as I'd predicted he would when the situation became too complicated. Tom Bradley was in the audience, his face pale with shock as he realized how completely he'd been manipulated. Dave, Rick, and Steve sat at a nearby table, finally understanding that they'd chosen the wrong side in this war. I walked off the stage and headed for the exit, my revenge complete. Emily had wanted freedom from extra weight. Now she had it, along with bankruptcy, unemployment, and the knowledge that she'd underestimated the man she'd tried to destroy. As I reached the hotel lobby, I heard footsteps behind me. Emily had followed me, her makeup ruined and her elegant gown wrinkled from her collapse. "Jason, wait," she called out desperately. "We can fix this. We can work something out." I turned to face her one last time, this woman who had shared my bed for 12 years before deciding I wasn't worthy of her future. "You already gave me my graduation gift, Emily," I said quietly. "You taught me that I was capable of so much more than I ever imagined. Thank you for that final lesson." She reached out toward me, but I stepped back. "Enjoy your freedom, Dr. Reed. You've earned it." I walked out into the Boston night, leaving Emily standing alone in the hotel lobby, finally understanding the true cost of her betrayal. She had wanted to leave extra weight behind, never realizing that she was about to become exactly that herself. The rain had stopped, and the city lights reflected off the wet pavement like scattered diamonds. I had won completely, not through violence or illegal schemes, but through patience, planning, and the careful application of consequences she had richly deserved. Emily's graduation gift to me had been divorce papers and public humiliation. My graduation gift to her was a comprehensive education in the dangers of underestimating the people you claim to love.